Ears on the bass play pizzicato.
Come on, and welcome to New World Supernova here, nothing but love, and today we're going to be talking about 5 ways that Act 3 of Wano could last a lot longer than you think it's going to last, alright? So, at this point in time, as of recording this, the official chapter release is chapter 996, so we're 4 chapters off the chapter 1000, there's a lot of hype surrounding that, but with the way the story's amping up, a lot of people are starting to speculate and getting to the point where they're like, okay, so is the story going to start winding down to the end of Act 3 here, leading up to chapter 1000, some big reveal in chapter 1000, interlude, and then back to Wano and everything that's happening in Act 4. Yes, it very well could do this. But there's also a massive possibility that Act 3 lasts a hell of a lot longer than we think it's going to last. Alright? So, number 5 on this list of ways I think that Act 3 of Wano can last a lot longer is the raid failing. Now, I know a lot of YouTubers and other people have talked about this possibility that the raid fails, the Straw Hats and the Alliance all get wiped out and they have to regroup and come back stronger than ever and get the job done another time, say a third time, because it's following that same sort of structure that Alabasta followed, where Luffy fought Crocodile Part 1, Luffy gets absolutely decimated, Luffy vs. Crocodile Part 2, he comes back armed with knowledge, much like Luffy's armed with Rio now, puts in a bit of work, ultimately fails, then Luffy comes back Part 3, steamrolls. Just absolute sheer willpower and just dominates. That is one possibility. And if that is the case and the raid does fail, we could seriously be looking at almost only being halfway through Act 3, depending on how you think it would play out. Or maybe it just puts about 10 chapters more onto Act 3 than you would think it would, in having to regroup and all that. Then Act 4 comes back with face-to-facing the enemies again, this time winning. Another thing, number 4. Right? This is sort of similar in a way, but it's the possibility that the raid shifts locations. Now, what do I mean by that? Throughout Wano, more specifically about the Kaido and Big Mom Alliance, they were talking about performing raids on the outside world to get the ancient weapons and poneglyphs, right? Well, okay, if they're performing raids, that means their plan is to, as Kaido said, shift location to the Flower Capital, and then leave the country, come back, leave the country, come back, leave the country, come back. It might play a sort of dystopian future where we fail the raid, or Kaido and Big Mom just leave the raid, meaning that we can't do anything to defeat them. They set up shop in the capital. Once in the capital, it's essentially no different to is if we had failed because we didn't beat them fast enough. So there is that possibility that that'll be a way that Act 3 drags out a hell of a lot more. Possibility number 3, and this is one that I think a few people sort of think we've already gotten, but I don't think they necessarily understand that it probably will happen to a bigger extent than what's already happened, and that is Kaido's flashback. An entire mini flashback arc, even if it's only 2 to 3 chapters like Big Mom's, or it could be as big as Oden's 14 chapter flashback. And sort of tie in both Kaido and Big Mom, seeing as how they're both the villains here, as the encompassing backstory of Rocks and what they did to the world, how it set up Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom, Shiki. A Rocks flashback, a villain flashback is almost inevitable. A Rocks flashback, there's a lot of story and a lot to unpack there. So that definitely would put a good 5-10 chapters into the end of Act 3, which would almost be fitting if you think about Act 3 opening up with the Oden flashback and telling how the good guys lost their hero, and then ending the act with Luffy getting to face Kaido, and then we go into a Rocks flashback where this terrible person that we've been wanting to take out in Orochi and Kaido, Orochi already being, it gets to the point where they start trying to humanize him right before his downfall. So there is a very big possibility that Kaido's flashback is sort of inevitably inbound for the end of Act 3. Possibility number 2, alright? This got a lot of people stirring from the scanlations of Chapter 996, and that's the intervention of an outside force. And by an outside force, I mean the Marines, the Warlords, the Revolutionaries. Could you not just see that Act 3 bloated out a hell of a lot more if all of a sudden you see Green Bull show up, or Kizaru show up, or Ivankov show up, like a lot of people were saying at the end of Chapter 996? It is very possible. You'd think that they're too busy dealing with other stuff in the world, but that being said, with whatever it is that the world government has and the SSG, the most terrifying plot point you could think of there, and the way that it would really exceed expectations, is if all the warlords, Mihawk included, were taken out by the world government and their new secret weapons after having defeated the warlords, and having essentially the revolutionaries in a trapline story with what's going on with CP0. You could have the Marines show up in Wano, and they could have the SSG, and they could be sort of high off the power that they just took down the warlords. The warlords currently consisting of Mihawk, someone that's arguably a Yonko level candidate, Weevil, someone that's compared to Prime Whitebeard, Doflamingo, a high tier commander level character who's obviously been arrested before the events. Boa, someone that I think is criminally underrated as having all 3 types of Haki, and outside of a finite few people in the series, everyone's susceptible to her ability, which is essentially a one-shot. Buggy, Kuma, you see where I'm going. If you say that the world government took down these people relatively quickly, swiftly, and easily, that would be shocking. And then to see that force show up in Wano, that would definitely blow out Act 3 and make the conflict in Act 4 a hell of a lot bigger. Because something I haven't really touched on, right, is all the fights we're seeing now isn't what Oda classifies as the conflict of Wano's arc. So all the fights that are happening now are sort of just to keep you entertained going along until we get to the meat of the action. To get to the meat of the action, we're talking about Kaido, we're talking about Big Mom, we're talking about the top 3 commanders, we're talking about the Supernovas, we're talking about potentially Big Mom's crew showing up and her commanders, admirals showing up. That would really shake the foundation of what we think's going on in the outside world as well. Lot to think about there. And the last thing that I think could probably expand the hell out of Act 3 of Wano, and this is something that would actually be very... it's been hinted at that it's not going to happen, which would mean that if it happened, it would almost be all the more shocking because of how much it's been said to us. Nah, it's not going to happen. And that's Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates turning on Kaido. Imagine if we just get to the... before we get to the very top tier echelon, where all the Straw Hats are lined up in a 1v1 sort of situation, if we get Big Mom see that Kaido's been injured by these low level people, and see that his forces are all in disarray, and Big Mom goes, I can take out the Straw Hats, I can take out the Alliance, and I can take out Kaido. I can take over Wano. I can get all the Sea Prism Stone in the world that I need. You could definitely see how that would also bloat out the hell out of Act 3. And so, all these sort of things are very possible for being things that just expand this section of the story a lot longer. There's also the possibility that none of these things happen. It's very, very possible that, we just keep trotting along. Act 3 ends with Luffy seeing Kaido, then Act 4 opens up, and it's just the generic 1v1s and the Supernova versus Kaido, and it's very hype, but it also lacks that sort of flair of Oda just putting shock factor in there. That said, tell me what you think in the comment sections down below. Join the Discord server. The link will be in the description down below as well. Feel free to talk to me about everything manga and anime related. Don't forget to hit subscribe, click the like button, and hit the bell icon so that way you can see more of my content as it's coming out. Trying definitely to be a lot more frequent and be a lot more clear and concise with videos that are coming across. So without further ado, have a damn great day. Peace.